Charizard, I choose you! To give me a blue post on class set acquisition, retrospective, and changes in 10.1. All right, so this week we are going to be, there's a pretty massive blue post talking about class sets, aka tier sets, and the acquisition and like what is going to be changing about them moving into 10.1, and then just kind of the future of tier sets. I think that this was actually a fairly interesting post just as a whole. It's always nice to see a little bit behind the curtain as to what Blizzard is thinking in regards to not only just class set acquisition, but just their general thoughts on the game, where the trajectory of the game is going. And I think that this post was actually very well written.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. The first part of the post is kind of a retrospective about how the gearing has worked out, how the catalyst worked out compared to, say, in Shadowlands. There was some interesting kind of revelations in there as well about basically like, even though the catalyst timing was the same as Shadowlands, the amount of people getting tier actually went up because a lot of other stuff changed. Like it was a lot easier to get multiple slots in your Great Vault.
Yep.
The chance of there being tier in your Great Vault went up. The raid was just easier.
Stair-stepping.
So you could kill the more bosses. Yeah.
There was stair-stepping progression of like Rygalon and Lords of Dread, whereas there wasn't in this most recent tier as well. And so that was also something that was cited as a factor.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, though, I think the retrospective, it wasn't anything that was... I don't think that there was anything that was like super shocking in the retrospective. Yeah, of course, trading requirements is going to... Basically, what it was saying is that it increased the ability to be able to get tier of players coming into 10.0 as opposed to 9.2. And so obviously there was a lot of things that factored into that, such as, like you said, just all those things that you cited.
Yeah. Then there were some big reveals in the later part of the post, which are important for future patch, right? Like that was basically like, hey, what are we doing next time? So first of all, it seems like Revival Catalyst timing is unchanged. He didn't directly say it in this post, but it's pretty heavily implied that like that's not moving.
That is certainly not explicitly stated, but it is definitely implied.
It may in fact even be. It's pretty close to. It's like it's basically guaranteed that it's still 6 weeks on the Catalyst. But everybody's now going to get. You can earn one Omni token,
correct,
which is like a tier token of any slot that you want, from getting Season 2 Master achievement, which is 2200 M+, 1800 PvP, or Heroic AOTC, which are fairly, I would say, reasonably comparable levels of difficulty. You argue PvP is easier. I suspect that by far PvP is going to be the least commonly done.
Well, I think I think it'll be the least commonly done way to get it, but that's just due to the amount of people doing arena. But I think that 1800 is certainly easier than I
think 2200 M+ score, like getting that on the third, fourth week, second week even is, I mean, that's like if you do it on the second week, it's 16s and 17s. It does mean you have to have done each of the dungeons though, but if you do it on the first week, that's going to be hard.
Sure, I'm thinking about first week acquisition. I think that first week acquisition, obviously the 1800 in PvP is going to be easier than getting 2200 rating.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of the people who get it first week are going to be getting it from AOTC as well. I think.
I think it's AOTC and 1800. I don't think anybody's going to be getting 2200 Mythic Plus rating just because it would be so difficult to be able to get that. But basically what an Omni token is you actually end up going to a vendor. You're able to select a specific slot of tier, and then you're able to get a piece of tier that is, did they say heroic item level equivalent?
Yeah, it's a heroic tier piece of any slot.
Yeah, so a heroic item level equivalent of that slot. And I mean, I think that that's actually such an interesting way of allowing players to get more tier. This will definitely help players who were, on the cusp for a little while, or maybe kind of low rolling the slot. They didn't get tier that dropped from two specific bosses, and they were stuck at 3 set for a while. This allows you to kind of sit on this Omni token that you get from this, and then turn it into tier to be able to complete either your 2 or your 4 set. And I think that is actually a really, really interesting revelation. On top of that, they stated basically that there was going to be no more Cosmic Flux with the Revival or the new Catalyst as well. There was going to be effectively just a charge system. I think they stated it was going to be stopping at 6 charges, but there was going to be no cost. And it was also not going to activate the moment that the character got leveled and stuff like that. It was going to just like be cumulative across all of your characters. So if you leveled a character late, you weren't going to be perpetually behind, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and most importantly, like you can't miss a week and not get your charge or anything like that. Like it's just it just works, right? It's like the best of both worlds of the Shadowlands
Actually,
model and the new model.
I don't think this is actually gated behind 6.
Yeah, they didn't say anything about the 6 cap, so either way, so we'll see if that stays or goes.
Yeah, I guess we'll see.
Um,
Okay, so lastly is raid specific Scale Commander Sarkaleth, which is the final boss of the raid, is also going to be dropping a guaranteed Omni token. And so this is kind of similar to the previous Omni token. Now, there are some things about this that we're left a little bit questioning. We're still hammering out specifics, but like the Mark of Mastery above, if any player that possesses this will be able to take it to a vendor and purchase a class set item. And one of the biggest things is it will drop 1 Omni token per defeat on all difficulties for your group guaranteed. 1 being the key here, whereas in the past you would get scaling depending on amount of players in your group.
If it is that is kind of cringe because it creates a huge incentive for if you have 20 people doing raid, you'll get more Omni tokens by splitting up to 2 teams of 10.
Yes.
Versus doing it once as 20, which is cringe. That sort of thing should not work like that. So hopefully by 1, it's like he means it drops an Omni token in its tier slot or whatever, and it's like 1 for 10 people. That's what that should be. If it is just straight up 1, then we're going to be doing a lot of 10-person Sarkaleth rushes.
Is that even true? Can't you just like go down with people who are locked as well?
Yeah, you could do it with 10 unsaved and any number of saved. That's true.
No. Couldn't you do it with 1 unsaved and none?
Oh, I assume that's not going to work.
Well,
usually when there's something like this, they make it so that if you have less than 10 people in the raid, you have a chance of just not getting the item.
Yes, correct. You have a chance of not getting loot at all, not even just the item, but any loot.
Right. But otherwise, yeah, you would do 9. You would do 9 saved, 1 unsaved, and just give them an Omni token, and you just keep running that, and that you'd give everybody an Omni token. So even hopefully, or that doesn't work. But
that would be weird.
The main thing is just hopefully it's just like a tier token that drops off that boss, right? And it's just if you have 10 people, you get 1. If you have 15 people, you get 1 and 50% of another. If you have 20 people, you get 2. That's how that should work.
They also stated, and we don't have like super heavy specifics, but they'll be reducing the number of tier drops for players as the season progresses. So basically, like in Mythic right now, you get guaranteed 2 pieces of tier off of all of the tier bosses. Like off of Kurogrim Totem, you get 2 pieces of tier guaranteed. Off of Razagath, you get 2 pieces of tier guaranteed. This hasn't changed. This has been the exact same the whole entire season. For early on in the season, yeah, you want 2 pieces of the tier from Mythic or 3 pieces of the tier from Heroic if you're playing with 30 players, or 1 piece or whatever, depending on your flex size. Right now, most players, especially with the Catalyst being unlocked, have all of their tier. Now, that's not going to be the case for all players, and like obviously, some tiers should drop. But what they said is that they're going to be reducing the amount of tier as the season progresses. We've heard feedback that players that are making late season runs at Mythic Progression or AOTC are often already have their class sets and feel like in contrast, they already have it at an item level that's decently above to those that are dropping, and so they basically want to improve the amount of loot that you're getting. And so this is great for things such as Broodkeeper, for example. That's the boss that immediately comes to my mind, where it's like, we don't need tier off Broodkeeper in my guild anymore. We would much prefer higher chances at getting Grief Torch or something.
Yes. Yeah. Now this change to me is like the litmus test of if somebody is just like always going to be negative about any change and like always see it as something bad. Because if this is something that comes out after the Catalyst does, like you always don't need the teardrops anymore after the Catalyst comes out, right? Like
correct. Yes. I agree with that.
Teardrops are not important. Possibly the ones from the later bosses or the higher item level versions, which are, that still has some utility, but like it is just good to do it like this for like that. It's just nice for everybody. And like there's I saw comments from people that are like, well, some of us don't get tier for 3 months, but it's like there's a catalyst there. Like there will be a catalyst by definition, but the system rolls in. So I mean, I think that's just pretty clearly a good idea.
I think that all of the stuff that we talked about, the only thing that I also had a question about is, does the Sarkaleth stuff drop the highest stair step item level equivalent from raid, such as like Razagath items are the only source of 424 pieces?
Right.
Is this Omni token going to be a 424 Omni token equivalent?
The Omni token, it's sort of interesting for heroic and normal, but not super important because either way you can just upgrade it to the same ceiling, right? Whether it drops at 390 equivalent or 398.5 equivalent, either way it's always going to be able to go up to 411 equivalent if it's from normal. And that so it kind of doesn't matter too much whether these Omni tokens reward, like will they reward the items at the appropriate item level, at like a fixed item level, or will they award it based on the item level that the boss that it drops from would drop? It is relevant though.
Yes.
It's like it saves you resources, and also the mythic versions of the Omni token, like the mythic Sarkareth one. It is sort of interesting. Like, hey, is this like the only way to get super top level legs if there's no, like, if the legs are from an early boss, something like that, or not? But it's not super important either way, because by the time you're getting mythic Omni tokens, you're killing the last boss, right? Yeah. So that doesn't matter.
All right, so I think that's covering basically what the post is. Now let's kind of give our thoughts about it. Starting off with the positives, I think that overall, just the group-wide achievement that gives you an Omni token, I think that this is a great way for giving a lot of players, even particularly raiders who aren't full clearing heroic or normal the first week, the ability to be able to get a tier piece faster. And it's cited here that these players were more often than not able to have their tier set before the catalyst came out, but it wasn't always the situation. And at the end of the day, it would almost always end up taking some of these players who would take a break or whatever about 6 weeks to be able to get that tier piece. It's stated that actually about up here. Now, I think that this is a situation where it allows these guilds that are progressing heroic, once they end up being able to fully clear the raid, they're able to get more and more players tier faster. Obviously, for guilds like ours, we do splits and stuff like that. This is good for us as well. I think that for most players who are going to be raiding, clearing heroic difficulty, honestly, I think that any player, this is like a pretty stark upgrade over what we saw in the past.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the amount of tier that's going to be accessible early in this patch is so high compared to before that, like, even guilds that are considering doing splits and stuff, you're going to hit diminishing returns really quick now with doing any kind of splits. Like, and if you're just a player that is full clearing normal raids by the time the first few weeks have passed of this expansion, and you can get to 2200 score in the first month of this patch, like, you will have 4-piece at 411 or better within those first few weeks, which is crazy, right? That's really high. I think that, to me, that's the big thing that is kind of left out of this post. That is the biggest change, is the upgrade system is a really huge buff to how good your tier will be and how good your gear will be, even if you're not doing Mythic Raid, right? Like, if you're only doing Mythic Plus, only doing PvP, then sure, it's not too much better for you than it was before. It's only a little better than it was last season. Yeah. But if you are a person who wants to do reasonably high M plus but does not want to Mythic Raid, and even heroic pugging is like kind of tough, normal raid is a source now of 411 equivalent gear using the upgrade system.
And I think that goes over players' heads, because basically with how the Shadow Flame crests work, you're able to, it's kind of like the primordial essences from this patch, where you're able to convert some of your items and like use a pseudo valor upgrade path and be able to upgrade, like Dratnos said, normal item level gear up to that heroic level, or upgrade heroic item level gear up to that mythic level, depending on what crests and what tokens and stuff like that you have.
Right. And the crests and stuff it's not a very time gated system. It's slightly time gated, but it is very forgiving. So, like, you get 10 per week of each difficulty type of crest. That very quickly will be all that you need. Basically,
for a lot of players, and especially those who are, full clearing normal and full clearing heroic the first week or the second week, most of your raid is going to be able to have 4 set by probably week 2 to week 3, and that's
I think so. I think if you are full clearing normal and most clearing heroic, let's say killing 4 of the 6 tier bosses on heroic, I think that's pretty reasonable. That, like, more than half of your raid should have 4-piece, and all of your raid should have 2-piece.
And then we also got this
second reset.
We also got this Omni token from Sarkareth, which is a big deal at being able to accelerate that a bit as well, because you're able to. I mean, everybody had a guild that was if you're in a guild, a raiding guild, you kind of got snubbed on one token more likely than not, where somebody was missing a piece of tier for a couple of weeks in a row, and you're like, okay, well, this sucks. You could force feed them the Omni token at that point, which is good.
Yeah. Now the Omni token, it's unclear if it's going to be like a
class or thing. Yeah.
Like, is it a Zenith Omni token, or is it
is it a raid Omni token?
Is it a gloves Omni token, or is it just a straight up Omni token? Right. These are the mysteries.
Yep. Okay, and so I think that is a bunch of the upsides. I think that the not having a currency is a big deal. This is going to be great for players who are starting out characters late. Obviously, for those who are like Dratnos, who don't always play all of their characters at the beginning of the patch, but for some reason end up with 12 characters towards the end of the patch. This is going to be great for them, especially those who love alts. Okay, so let's talk, I think, about some of the downsides of the system, but I don't think... So let me start off by saying I don't think these are any new downsides. I think these are downsides that always pre-existed with the system as a whole ever since it has come back. And I think that it is actually kind of... You could make an argument that it is getting worse because some players are getting tier faster, whereas other players are getting tier at approximately the same rate. And so this was actually a pretty big part of this post whenever I read it. Basically is stating that knowing that the 6-week catalyst unlock timing would be controversial, we held fast due to the other incoming changes to get a look at how things would shake out. And as it happens, our data shows that these changes had an even bigger impact than anticipated. And so then some of the things were players were killing bosses on more difficulties than before, which led to more vault slots and gear trading. That said, some readers will correctly identify that there's groups of players that were still left out of this bounty. These players are those who engage only with Mythic Plus and only with PvP. With 0 rating at all, these players still on average had decent luck getting some set pieces via the Great Vault change, but were extremely unlikely to complete their 4 set before the Catalyst arrived. I see this as a problem. I do see this as a fairly large problem because these are identified as class sets, right? These aren't just raid tier sets. These aren't just PvP tier sets. These are class sets, and these are supposed to be universally used for all players in all forms of content. And the fact that raiders get them multiple weeks in advance kind of sucks, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's worth noting, like, what he's saying there is that was a characteristic of the Vault Catalyst, not of the Aberrus Catalyst, right? Like, the goal here is let's give M+ers and PvPers especially this extra Omni token, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that will help them out. Now, obviously, is it going to help them out enough that if you don't ever set foot in the raid, you can reasonably get tier before the Catalyst comes out? No, I mean, realistically, you're going to get tier 1 week earlier than you would have before if you are not ever setting foot into the raid or if you're not setting foot into the raid at all.
Yeah.
But if you are setting foot into the raid even a little bit, you're getting tier way faster than before. And if you're not setting foot in the raid, you are still getting it 1 week earlier, right? You're getting 1 free Omni token.
I do think,
which is something, right? Like it's better than it was before.
Yeah, I do. It's definitely better than it was before. And I don't want to be too much of a downer here because I feel like these changes just on the whole, again, I want to make this explicitly clear. I think these are great changes. I do think that this is a group of players that is very large that this should be fixed in some capacity. Like Blizzard should be looking to fix this more as opposed to trying to make it easier for raiders to be able to acquire their 4 set because everybody wants to play with their 4 set. It's just more fun.
Yes, but I think that there is definitely like a large set of players that would describe themselves as like M+ers that do or can clear normal raid.
Yes.
Right. And those players now get a huge buff, right? Like if you're a M+ player who does M+ as your hard fun content, but then you clear normal raid with some friends or whatever, now you are getting much better tier out of this whole equation than you would have before. So yes, it basically, like, Blizzard pretty clearly wants the raids, like the set bonuses, to be still a reason to go to the raid, right? Like they want you to go to Aberrus because you can get these set bonuses.
They're not willing to make the Catalyst the only way of getting them. Correct.
Right. They're not moving to a world of like it's equally fast to get it from M+. If you want to get it from M+, you either got to go do raid, which now they're saying, hey, you can do normal or heroic and get mythic level raid gear though as well out of those difficulties, which is a big huge deal. Buff if you are willing to do those. But yeah, if you're somebody who only wants to do M+, and then yeah, this post is not signaling the paradigm shift that you were hoping for. And I do empathize with, like, if you want to only do M+ and you want to have good gear, I get it. That
it makes sense. I mean, I think that PvP is like even more okay. So Mythic Plus, there's a lot of crossover between raiding and M+ just because it is PvE content, so the crossover is actually pretty high. If I was a PvP exclusive player, I would actually kind of be annoyed with this post, right? Because I do hate every single, like I see hate posts every single season, whether it be on the forums, whether it be on Twitter or whatever, where players are like, they rotate into some, and they call them Dragon Slayer, person with Dragon Slayer level gear that has their 4 set before them, and they just own them in arena, and they're like, why do I even queue into this guy? Like, what even is the reason that I can even queue into this person? And that seems so weird that it is set up like this. I guess I have a question, and I have thoughts on this, but I'm interested in hearing what you think. What would you think about a Mythic Plus and PvP only tier sets? And we actually went back to like multi-tier set model that we had in the past.
I think that multi-gear sets are a big drawback
Okay.
to like that. There's a lot of downsides associated with doing that. There might be some upsides there. Like, yeah, obviously, like getting good gear for the content you do from the content you do. Obviously, PvP already has that with like PvP item level on the pieces that drop from it.
But they still have to have
like
tier.
separate tier sets, separate set bonuses. Like, first of all, it's pretty hard to imagine that of the 38 specs in the game, they wouldn't have one where it's like, oh, actually the M plus set bonus is our best one for raid. Oh, actually the raid set bonus is our best one for M plus or PvP, right? So when you have those, like you'd have more than 100 different sets now that even like if it's like, oh, the spec, well, actually they just nerfed this spec because its raid set bonus is good, but I'm an M pluser and my M plus set bonus is fine. And so I just took this nerf collaterally. Like, man, there's a lot of downsides there, not even to mention the downside of, oh, now I have 3 different gear sets that I need to like swap between as I'm going between different content, and like my class is working differently and all those. So I think that a much more realistic, but still not something that they're obviously indicating they're going to do, solution would just be to like increase the amount of tier that you can get from clearing M plus and from doing PvP, right? Like, let it be that if you like what if you just got like a LFR piece of tier from getting to 1500 M plus score, and then a normal piece from 2K and a heroic piece from 2.5K and a mythic piece from 3K or something like that, like bang, right? Like that. That doing something like that would be a way, if they wanted to, of just giving M plusers tier. But given that they don't want to give M plusers tier, then that, none of the different ways of them doing it are going to happen, right?
I mean, they could also have it be a thing in the vault where you like opt into having a piece of tier in your vault for min plus slots or whatever. But then like obviously, I don't know. It's weird. They actually did state. So I saw data early on in the season that they had increased the amount of tier that you were getting out of your vault, but now they have actually come out and stated that they did increase the amount of tier that you were getting out of your vault. And that's also something that's super cool. So basically they want players to have tier. They're not trying to hold players back. Now it is unfortunate in my opinion. I don't want to say weird. It is unfortunate in my opinion that these players who only do Mythic Plus and only do PvP, like you stated, are probably still going to be in a similar situation as they were in the past.
Yeah, it's like I would say this: if you're somebody who is not a mythic raider, but you are good at PvP or good at M+, it's way better for you if you're willing to do the normal and heroic raids, right? Like even just normal raid, it's way better for you. Even if not, like it is better for you. You're going to get an Omni token, which means now you only need to high roll 1 Great Vault to get your 2-piece and 3 to get your 4-piece, which obviously that's still going to be hard. But
I have some friends who like, I mean, in addition to that, it's actually really hard to kill the final boss on heroic early on too. So I mean, that's always kind of a challenge, especially for pugging. I had some friends.
Normal is usually pretty doable.
Yeah, I have some friends who were pugging a little bit this season, and like 2 or 3, like all 3 of them actually, the 3 people who I think of right away. None of them had their 4 set before the catalyst unlocked, even still, and they pugged heroic a couple of times, and they're primarily Mythic Plus players. But it's like it sucks that like they don't have tier, and then you and I are disenchanting our tier in our guilds by the time
and those players that you just described will have 4-piece now with this new system, right?
That's
like
probably true.
Those are not the M plus only players that are the M plus only players that are still going to be in pain are going to be the ones that will not go and do pug heroic or pug normal. And I think that the big thing as well is that the pug normal, it kind of didn't feel good to go do it, right? Like even if you had 3-piece, like, do you really want to go pug normal to try and get 4-piece? And it's like really low item level, and you know that in like 3 weeks Catalyst is going to come out, and like I'm just going to wait till then, and like it's going to suck. But now with the upgrade system, like going and pugging normal, any item that drops for you, you can bring up to heroic eye level. Like that's huge as long as you've got the heroic upgrade pieces, which come from plus 11 keys. Like that's I'm not saying that those are free, but I'm saying that a lot of the people who complained about this in the past were able to do the keys at that level.
Certainly. My general final thoughts on this though are like anything that makes players have to sit back and say, why should I play now whenever I can play later whenever I have my tier is almost certainly a really big downside of the system, and it makes it difficult for those players who are stuck in this spot. Any final thoughts on this specifically before we kind of move to overarching thoughts of the system?
I guess I'll say, yeah, like it sucks if you ever do feel like you should just not play until the catalyst comes out or something like that. I think that this though goes a long way towards like I think that this is going to reduce that feeling by quite a lot.
It certainly will give you more.
Most people.
It will certainly give you more tier.
There are still some that will be less well, but there's certainly nobody that's like worse off as a result of this.
Yeah.
It's like everybody's either getting a little better or a lot better from this.
You never use your Omni token until you're at three set though, right?
That is a weird quirk of this, is the fact that you should not use your Omni token until you have 3 piece. I guess if you have 1 piece and you're not going to get 4 piece for a while, you could use the Omni token. But yeah, it would feel really bad to cash your Omni token in on a helm and then see a tier helm in your vault the next week, right? So
correct.
That is a weird side of this.
Overall, though, I think that personally, I'm very happy with these systems. I think I'm really happy with this blue post. It made a lot of sense of the stuff that they were saying, and made sense of a lot of the avenues that they were taking to continue to improve not only the Catalyst, but tier acquisition as a whole. I think that giving more players the ability to be able to get tier faster is certainly something that is positive for the game, because tier sets are fun. And I think that that's like something that's one of the big things that I am happy that they brought back tier sets just as a whole, because tier sets on the large are just fun. I think that they're great to be able to interact with specifically your kit, and we kind of talked about this last week. Are they interacting with kits enough? And now that's subjective to opinion, but I think that specific things that interact with your kits, interact with your talents. I'm really happy with tier sets. I'm really happy in the way that they're moving with the acquisition process. Any final words from you? Any final thoughts?
Agree. Yeah, I think good step, good changes here. Would be open to it being even better for like M pluses and PvPers. Yeah, I think that would be good, but I understand why Blizzard wants there to be a good reason to go into the raid, and I think that given that constraint, this is a really nice middle ground.
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard did state that this was part 1 of a part 2 post, so I mean, there's still a chance
next week's video
that something changes,
depending on what's in that post. We get another easy content.
All right, but yeah, we'll be back next week. Maybe we'll get more loot posts before now and then. Maybe we'll get a nice part 2 of a part 2 series that we didn't know was that. Yeah, I think it's gonna be it. We'll see you guys later.
GN.